I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now, from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This dynamic half hour, if you don't mind me saying, brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Online, sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, the best in new inventory, all with great warranties and safety features. A great pre-owned inventory, including 18 Escapes and Explorers now on the lot. And a fabulous service department that backs it up every step of the way with quick lane inspections, routine, difficult, all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. What makes the segment dynamic is that we have somebody who defines that in Nate Bauer. Sir, welcome.
Oh, wow. Thanks for having me.
You have to give me credit. I come up with a new one every time.
Yeah, no, it's eternally flattering.
You've earned it, my friend, believe me. So, a lot to talk about here. Basketball, of course, is in a tough spot. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Michigan, for example, which is a very good team. There's no getting around it. They've won 5 in a row by a whopping total of 15 points.
Mm-hmm.
They have, I think the largest margin of victory is 4, but they win the games. Yep. Penn State, meanwhile, is tied for the national lead with Northwestern with 7 losses of 6 points or less. Okay.
Yep.
Now, also where you don't want to be, right? Why is that?
Yeah, and should be stated, another one by 7 and another one by 8.
Yep.
Right. So, to be honest, I've lost track of the stat. I think it's 2 and 8 in games that had a differential of 2 possessions or fewer in the last 2 minutes of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's not good. That's just the reality here, right? Is Penn State has put itself in a position to win games and it has not fallen their way. And I think that it is a mistake to paint it with too broad of a brush. Right, as though Ace Baldwin is solely to blame because he's taken 3 of the last shots, right? Or that Mike Rhodes is solely to blame. They've had a few repeated situations that I think are problematic. He has laid out his reasoning with timeouts remaining to not call a timeout off of a live ball that has repeated itself, I think, 3 times now, at Iowa, at Michigan, and then most recently, obviously, against Washington, where they've had the ball. They've had a last look at the basket with an opportunity to tie or win, get to the free throw line, you name it, and he has chosen not to draw something up because, to his reasoning and his rationale, they are better scoring offensively, not allowing defenses to get set up. Right? Mm-hmm. You have to respect that. I'm not a D1 basketball head coach. I can't argue against it. I just think that given the nature of how these things have played themselves out, it may be Penn State's preference to have the ball in Ace Baldwin's hands at the end of the game. He's your best player. I don't think there's anybody denying that. But the record reflects an inability to necessarily get a good shot with the ball in his hands.
Right.
And so that's the knife's edge that you live on is, okay, you've got the ball in your best player's hands. The defense has not had an opportunity to set itself up, but the results keep repeating themselves. And so because of that, a season that had quite a bit of promise at the end of December has since, really fallen apart spectacularly.
Right. And on the timeout part of it, and I've done a few games in my career.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. On the timeout part, it depends on who your personnel happens to be. If I've got a very young point guard out there running the show, I'm inclined to call one because, look, I got to tell everybody what to do here. But the problem is that, and I say this with all due respect, but if you're going to the Dick Vitale School of Coaching, where every time for years and years and years he told everybody you need a timeout, need a timeout, need a timeout, that's where everybody's getting it from. Sorry, that's just what's been reinforced to you on TV over and over again. Villanova won the national championship on the last shot of the game. Where was Jay's timeout?
Yep.
So it's all on the result. In hindsight, calling a timeout, yeah. I could. Why didn't they call a timeout? They lost. I got it. But nobody mentions it when Villanova gets the winner off no timeout. I mean, it's all about the result of it and who's running at the time. Now, when Yannick juggled the ball the other day,
correct.
Okay, that point you're like, hey, maybe you need to call one here because they're not sure. Okay, so that part, I can understand that. I just don't want people to fall into the one-size-fits-all. Dick Vitale told you for 40 years you have to call a timeout there. Well, there's a reason why he's not coaching anymore. Okay. So.
Yeah. Yep. And 100%. And it is simply, I think, from the perspective of, certainly from fans, but even Mike himself, right, has acknowledged It's not a hard and fast rule for him, right? It's based on feel. The issue is when that feel has created a repeating result.
Exactly. Yep.
It naturally lends itself, to being questioned for sure, but also to some self-doubt and having to live with that. I just think there is a validity to the notion, like you said, once Yannick had the ball in his hands, shot selection in terms of ace for right. He's not a 3-point shooter, and so for that to be the last look that you get, I think it's a hard argument to make that's right. The best shot that you could have gotten in those scenarios. But at the same time, you understand that the best 3-point shooter you have is Zach Hicks, and Big Ten defenses have figured him out. They have painted themselves on him. He's not free to take that shot. You have to give them credit, honestly, for pushing the ball to Yannick. The design off of that 1-on-1 miss was not to have Ace shoot it. It was to have Yannick shoot it, and he couldn't handle it. So
that's right.
It's like you said. It is. It's just a tough place to be in for the program when the results have repeated themselves the way that they have, because you can't you just can't deny that, right? I mean, on probability alone, you don't anticipate having that much of an avalanche of failure in that moment spread out over the course of the season.
And that's the. I mean, do you want to know how many games have been lost after calling a timeout? A whole bunch.
Sure.
You want to know how
absolutely.
many games have been lost not calling a timeout? A whole bunch. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to either one. And because it's happened repeatedly, I completely respect fans sitting there saying, you got to call a timeout because they're seeing the same result without calling it. Meanwhile, Mike has a career where he's won 72% of those games in his career where he hasn't done it. So like he's had success doing it that way, but the fans here haven't seen it because he's only been here 2 years. So I mean, I could totally understand it. This is where I'm seeing it right now. Where I'm seeing it is in two areas beyond the, keeping the ball in front, things like that. To me, Penn State is not winning the middle eight. They're getting leads in the first halves of games and squandering the leads in the last 4 minutes and then not regaining momentum in the opening 4 minutes of the second half. That middle eight has really hurt them. And the other part is, and this is part Penn State, and it's part with the officiating, but part Penn State. The Oregon game is a great example. Penn State has been in 10 of these, 11 of these games? 11 games? And this is the stat I keep. So this is all on me for keeping this stat. In close games this year, Penn State has only 44 free throw attempts in the final 4 minutes. That's it. I mean, that defies explanation to me in some ways because they're 82% in those 44. They're 82%. That's where you should be able to extend leads, put games away, get yourself back in it, and they're not getting to the line. Now, Oregon's a good example where the last 5 possessions, they didn't deserve to get to the line. They took bad shots. But a lot of other times, I've had my doubts about a couple things I'm seeing in terms of how it's being called, with Michigan absolutely being one of them.
Yeah, it's this tricky line of ace, right? They've been in the double bonus quite a few times where they settle for a 3-point shot. There have been opportunities to pick up fouls on them. Now, granted, you're trusting that you're going to get the call in that situation. And guess what? That's a tough call to get. Ace has not been treated, I think it is fair to say, as though he is one of the better point guards in the league, certainly, or the country as a scoring guard. And so that frustration has been in his body language really throughout the calendar year. It certainly was the case against Indiana. I mean, I can think off the top of my head lots of times where he has not pursued that course of action because there's no rationale behind it. Right? If you've developed this muscle memory of not getting the call in that circumstance, then you're probably going to shy away from it. But it's just this double-edged sword of that shot for him is not the best shot for the team. The best approach, like you said, they shoot a ton of free throws and they make a ton of free throws. He makes a ton of free throws. But if you're going to settle for a 3-point shot in that circumstance, you have to live with the result if it doesn't go in. And percentages wise, it's not a good percentage for him. So it has been a tough slog for this team, of which it has had lots and lots of opportunities that it just hasn't been able to capitalize on. And a big part of this is sort of piggybacking on what you're saying, not getting, like, it goes without saying, hey, don't be behind by 2 points at the end of the game in the first place.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Why have you gotten into that situation where a late run has put you in a do-or-die place where you have to make a play, as opposed to being able to simply maintain and close out the lead that you already have, which is something that they have done multiple times this season, including Northwestern, including Rutgers.
Yeah. No, and that's for example, in the Michigan game, you have a ball that's knocked out of bounds. Now, it may have been the right call, but they asked for them to look at it. That's the only time all season I've seen the officials say, no, we're not going to look at it. But they'll look at a potential flagrant with 2 seconds to go in a 40-point game. Like, what are you doing? Right? I wouldn't look at it. It's the same official, because then they come down and Danny Wolf really belted Nick. And that was the end of the court where our broadcaster was, because we could see it plain as day. There's no call. Right? Now, that doesn't mean Nick's going to make the free throws. It does not. But you see stuff like that, and you're like, what are you doing here? You got to review it. You may have gotten it right to begin with, but at least review it. The other one you totally got wrong. But then you go to the Oregon game, and it's Penn State's fault on shot selection why they didn't get to the line there, because their shots did not deem that you should get to the line, and they never passed the ball the last 5. I mean, and I'm not joking about that. The only pass was the inbounds pass to the person who caught it and brought it up the floor and took the shot. They didn't pass the ball once in their last 5 possessions against Oregon. That's on them for how they played it.
Yep. It's again, it's just you get into this, and it's the easy thing to do is to paint with a broad brush and to say, oh, it's this one thing. And it hasn't been one thing. Yes, officiating has been involved. Yes, shot selection, play selection. Yes, choice of, in Mike's case, choice of timeout when Yannick bobbles it to get a baseline out of bounds, right, and set yourself up with 11 seconds to play. All of those things contribute, and look, it's just a tough spot, because if that's the case, if it is this litany of things, it still all points to the same thing, which is not being able to succeed in those moments. Right? Like it changes the dynamic from being unlucky to okay, there's something to this, right? This is problematic for this team specifically, on top of all of the other things that have gone wrong for them this season.
Yeah. And again, so everybody understands, Nate just talked about all the things I talked about. I think that's a fair analysis. This game, it's your fault. This game, we talked about the timeout part of it. In this game, did I say all 3 games were officiating? Nope. I mentioned one game where it played a role. The other 2, I didn't say that. Right? I mean, I think it's pretty fair.
Yep.
So, well,
onwards and upwards.
Well, I mean, people say, "What do you do now?" And I say, "I get ready for the next game." So it's my job to talk about the next game. Stan Drayton, running backs coach, got a chance to talk to him yesterday for a little bit. Speaks very highly of you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, everybody does. But it seems on the surface like a pros hire. What's your thought on it?
Very much so. I think it is a. I mean, look, I understand how this sounds. You lose a guy in Jaywan Sider who has been around the program for forever and is trusted and has a record of success. But if that's going to happen, for you to replace him with a guy who has, indisputable evidence of his success in producing running backs toward the NFL, in the NFL, I think it is a perfect marriage of timing for this program. Older guys, how reasonable is it to expect Nick Singleton and Katron Allen to have to maximize the juice that can be squeezed out of them in the 4th year hearing the same voice? And that is no knock on Jaywan. It is simply a matter of, hey, here's a different perspective. You've already got this outstanding foundation that even if you don't get a smidge better, you're still a mid-round NFL draft pick, both of those guys.
Right.
Okay, how about add this guy's eyes to the equation? What changes? What different perspectives can he bring that might tweak things just that hair more? Right? It is always such a fascinating dynamic of having a conversation about it. It's not it's not always about the dramatic improvement, right? Penn State's defense with Jim Knowles. Tom Allen had a top 20 defense last year.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great defense.
Yep.
Okay, what if you can make that top 20 defense top 3?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Stan Drayton, what if you can make 2 outstanding running backs who were wildly successful coming down the stretch run, give them both a healthy offseason, right, where they both have an opportunity to get faster, stronger, all of the developmental stuff that goes into it with his perspective on top of it. I just think it bodes extremely well for closing the gap, right? For finding wins in the margin, which is really what winning is all about when you get to this stage of their success as a program.
Yeah. And look, here's a guy who's been at that level. He can tell them all the things that you do without the ball to make you valuable at the next level, because we all know what your value is with the ball. There's a lot that goes into it. He knows. All right, my friend, outstanding as always. I think the dynamic introduction, to your credit, you exceeded it.
Oh, man. Well, listen, I just try to live up to the host, so thank you for having me, as always.
Our praise to Todd on that. All right, thanks so much. Appreciate you, my friend. See you later.
All right, see ya. Bye.
This half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motors here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is, because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
This winter has been cold, but Sunbury Motors Hyundai says, let's be alive in 2025 and heat things up with their huge selection of new Hyundais now. Hurry into SMC and drive away in a 2025 Hyundai Elantra for under $22,000. That's right, a 2025 Elantra starts at just $21,728 with up to $1,792 off or 3.99% financing for 60 months. And there's 22 to choose from. 2025 all-wheel drive Hyundai Tucsons start at only $29,161 with up to $27,414 off or 2.49% financing for 60 months. And there's 42 available. Sunbury Motors continues to be this area's mid-size SUV leader with up to $6,524 off the newly redesigned 2024 Hyundai Santa Fe's or 2.99% financing for 72 months, and they start at only $40,431. They have 5 that must go now, and all have America's best warranty. Sunbury Motors Hyundai in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury.